and purpose, where we talk about the transformative power of God's word and how that leads to us discovering our purpose and unlocking our untapped potential. And today I'm here with Brett Clemmer. I should have asked you if I pronounced your name correctly, but here we go. Brett Clemmer, the president and CEO of Man in the Mirror. And we're going to continue our conversation about how aligning yourself with the promises of God leads to deeper understanding of your purpose and the potential that lies on the inside of you. So, Brett, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so it's my pleasure. I'm super excited about this for a couple of reasons. Number one, because we scheduled this about 2, 3 months ago, so I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And because we both have the same hairdo. So
That's
I'm like,
right.
dude, this
Same,
is
same barber.
yes, that's right. We're in total alignment here. So
Yeah.
so why don't you just start by introducing yourself and tell a little bit about, your background and the work that you guys do.
Sure. Well, I've been a man in the mirror for 23 and a half years,
Wow.
which yeah, I never thought that. I when I came here, I just needed a job, so I
Okay.
was happy to have regular employment. It's a long story, but
Yeah.
so yeah, so I've been a man in the mirror. I've been in the CEO position for the last 7 years, and it's been a wonderful place to be. Pat Morley's the founder of the ministry, and so I had an encounter with him before I ever knew about the ministry. I read his book, The Man in the Mirror,
Hmm.
at a particularly difficult time in my life, and it really had a huge impact on me and on my marriage, and so that was sort of the God putting the groundwork in place for when I would meet him and find out about the ministry and end up applying for a job here. So I'm a husband. I've been married for it'll be 33 years in a month to my wonderful
Wow.
wife Kimberly, and we have two adult children, a daughter named Cassidy and a son named Jackson. Jackson's married to Martha, and they all my son and daughter-in-law live in Chattanooga. My daughter is actually in the process of moving up to Chattanooga. She bought a house about three-quarters of a mile away from her brother, and
Nice.
uh, and then my son and daughter-in-law have a baby coming in about the next month, so that'll be our first grandchild, and she'll have an auntie close by. So
Nice. That's
yeah,
nice.
so it's sort of a cool time.
That's cool. So you have a boy and a girl, right?
Yeah,
Okay, which
mine's
one got
older.
married? Is the girl?
My son got married. My son's
Okay.
my son's 26, 27,
Okay.
27, and
Okay.
he got married, and my daughter's still looking.
Nice. So I've got 4 kids. I've got 2 girls and 2 boys. The reason why I asked that is because I feel like and they're all grown too. Although we thought we are going to be empty nesters, but they keep coming back. That's another story. But my feeling is that my guys can get married. I mean, I don't want to throw them on anybody unprepared. I mean, I want them to be prepared.
Right.
They can get married, but my girls, man, they could stay with me forever. I'm like, you guys can't.
Yeah.
Is that a boy's name you're mentioning? No way. I don't want to talk about
Yeah. Yeah.
guys. So
The
is that how
stakes
you feel?
feel the
Yeah.
stakes feel a little higher with your daughter than with your son, for sure.
Yeah. No
Yeah,
question. No question.
yeah, I love my daughter. My daughter and I are very interesting. We are like peas in a pod.
Mm.
We are very much alike. The first thing that the first words said when she was born was, "Well, we know who the father of this one is." Like, she looks like me, unfortunately, with a lot more hair, fortunately. So we just really get along well, and she did the thing, moved back in with us about a year ago,
Got it.
had a condo and sold it and moved back in with us for about a year while she was trying to figure out where she wanted to live, and so now she's moving back out, and my heart's a little broken to have
Yeah.
her leave, but it'll be good for her, and it'll be good for my wife and I too, to be back
Yeah.
to the nest.
Yeah, it is good, but it is, yeah, kids, it's funny. I feel like my wife and I, and we've been married, man, you hit on so many topics I want to talk about, but my wife and I have been married 34 years, just
Ah,
1 year longer than you.
congratulations.
Thank you. But yeah, the whole empty nest thing,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. We're looking forward to it, but I do love the fact that my kids still want to hang out with me,
Yeah.
which is great, you know what I mean? So that's cool. But yeah, so you talked about uh you were just looking for a job. You talked about
Yeah.
when you got that. So tell me a little bit more about that. What was going on?
Sure. Yeah, so we were living in Orlando or north of Orlando, Florida, and I had long story short, I had started a software company with
Hmm.
some friends of mine.
Okay.
And I sort of came out of the social service sector, but we'd started a software company, database company. And we were going like gangbusters 2000 or 1998, 1999. Things were really ramping up at the end of 99. And I was on the road all the time.
Hmm.
I was trying to build this company, had a lot of friends and family money in it. And so
Yeah.
felt a lot of stress and anxiety. And so I was just gone all the time. And we had two toddlers at home.
Hmm.
And so one day I had to call my wife and tell her I had another last minute business trip. And she basically said a sentence that changed my life. She said, "That's okay. It's easier when you're not here."
Wow.
And so I thought that's not a good thing, I don't
No.
think. And here's the crazy part, Rufus. We were in church multiple times per weekend. If you saw us walking into church, you saw this guy walking in with his pretty wife and his two towhead kids, and he was a software entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and we looked great. My daughter's my wife's the daughter of a pastor,
Wow.
like we just looked like we had it all together. But what people didn't know was that I was, and I'm sorry, and we were super engaged in children's ministry in the church.
Wow.
We
Okay.
were in a mega church that had 7 services a weekend. Sometimes we would do all seven in
Wow.
children's ministry, leading worship and doing skits and stuff like that. And so what people didn't realize though was that I was abandoning my family during the week to go build this company and then rushing home to minister to other people's kids for the
Yeah.
weekend. And then Monday morning out the door, abandoning my family again. And so I didn't know what my wife said this to me in late 99, early 2000. I really didn't know what to do. And a buddy of mine called me up. Our wives were in a small group together.
Hmm.
And so my buddy called me up and he said, "Hey, Brad, I think, I'm trying to call all the husbands of these wives that are in the small group. I think we should have a men's small group too,
Hmm.
if for no other reason than just to protect ourselves, because I'm pretty sure they're talking about us." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm in." Like I haven't told anybody, but my marriage is super struggling. And so I got in this group with these guys and they were reading The Man in the Mirror. And
Wow.
they had handed it out in church to all the men. And so I'm reading this book. The first chapter is called The Rat Race. I understood that. Second
Yeah.
chapter is called Leading an Unexamined Life. Well, I understood that. The third chapter is called Are You a Biblical Christian or a Cultural Christian? And now I'm
Wow.
actually getting angry because he wrote a book about me, And
Right.
I was in this group with these guys and we locked arms. We all had issues. We were all leaders in the church.
Hmm.
We all had issues. A couple of us were struggling in our marriage. Sorry.
No problem.
A couple of us were struggling in our marriage. A couple of us were struggling with sexual temptation and porn and business issues and like just all this stuff going on. And everybody on the outside looked good
Yeah.
and everybody on the inside was struggling. And so this group of guys, once we got honest, it took us about 4 or 6 weeks to get honest with each other.
Sure.
But once we got honest, it was no holds barred. And we locked arms together and we walked through life for several years together. And it really changed everything for me.
Wow.
So at the end of the year, the software company, the 2000 was when the tech market crashed.
Yeah.
We had all this venture capital that just sort of went up in smoke.
Hmm.
And so I had to shut the company down. And one of the guys in the small group said, I think Pat Morley's looking for a guy like you." And I'm like, what are you talking about? Is the guy that wrote the book? And he's like, "Yeah, you moron. Look on the back of the book. It says, ministry in Winter Park, Florida, the next town over." And
Wow.
I had no idea. And so one thing led to another. I got an interview, got a job, and 23, almost 24 years later, here I am.
Wow. I mean, that's crazy. It's crazy because I see so many similarities in our story. and I'm just resisting the urge to go off script here. So I can tell this is going to be a wild and crazy ride, but I'll try to hang on as long as I
Yeah,
can here. But
yeah,
so let's talk a little bit more about your journey, your personal journey.
sure.
So like how have you personally dealt with feelings of, like unfulfillment and, disconnection from your purpose? And then also
Yeah.
like what strategies have you found effective in overcoming those kinds of challenges?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've worked in a ministry now full time, um, for 2 decades, and
Mm,
guys all the time talk to me and they're like, "Man, it must be great to work in a ministry because
yeah,
you never doubt your calling. You never you just get to be with Jesus every day. You get to be in the Bible every day."
right.
And I tell guys, it's a job, man. It's a job. I look at spreadsheets, I look at marketing plans, I have to hire people and
Yeah,
unfortunately sometimes fire people. And it's just a company and that has a Christian mission.
yeah,
But really if you're selling insurance, you can have a Christian mission. You don't have
right.
to
Exactly.
be
Yeah,
in ministry to do that. And so there have been many times where I'm going through the motions,
mm,
and I can always tell when those times are. Like I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. I hit the snooze an extra time.
right.
I'm not excited about things, and good news at work doesn't really make me joyful the way it should. And I just, for me anyway, it's sort of that feeling of apathy. Like you said, disconnection's a great word.
Yeah,
And for me, I have some guys in my life that know me really well. One, really close friend in particular, brother, and they know when to look at me and challenge me, and they know
yeah,
when to look at me and pat me on. Pat Morley has a great saying. He says, "Sometimes you need a pat on the back, and sometimes you need a kick in the seat of the pants."
yes,
And these guys know what I need and when I need it, and so they challenge me to ask those questions. And so I think that's sort of the biggest thing, is having those outside guys to be honest with me and sort of, nudge me the way that I
yeah.
need to go.
Sure. No, I love that. So community, yeah, we'll get into that. I'm telling you, man, this is a wild and crazy ride. I'm like everything
Yeah.
this guy is saying, I want to jump on it. So we'll save that for a little bit later. But let's shift gears a little bit here, and I'd like to know if you could share maybe a specific instance where you maybe struggled to apply a biblical principle in your everyday life, and kind of, what did you do to ultimately overcome that?
Yeah, it's I've got a group of guys that a group of guys I'm meeting with now, and we
Mm,
were just talking about this. And I actually asked them the question, how many of you feel like your spiritual life is where it should be right now?
wow.
And of course, nobody raised their hand.
Right.
And I'm like, well, how about like it's better than average? And still nobody raised their hand.
Wow.
And I said, all right, so what could you do to help get your spiritual life back on track? And they kind of gave me the pat answers, that, I need to read my Bible more. I
Sure.
need to find a place to serve. I need to be more faithful in attending church. And what it all came down to is just trying harder.
Yeah.
And I just looked at him and I'm like, I gotta tell you guys, that's not it. It's not about trying harder.
Yeah.
Um, and so we talked a little bit more, and we actually came down to two things.
Okay.
And the first one is talking to God. And the example that I used with them was, I've been married for a long time. And let's say that I could tell you all about marriage really, really well. I
Yeah.
could tell you what's great about it, why you need to be married, all the benefits of it, all the pitfalls of it. I could read books about marriage. I can memorize some of those books and memorize lines from those books and quote them back to you. I could get up in front of people and talk about marriage and how to make your marriage better. But if I don't actually talk to my wife, I don't really have a marriage.
Right.
I have a roommate.
Yeah.
Um, and how many of us, that's exactly what our spiritual life looks like.
That's right.
We study the book, we memorize lines from the book, we memorize verses,
That's a good point.
we read all these books about Christianity, we read all these books about discipleship, but we never actually talk to God. or if we do, it's, it's momentary
Yeah.
and transactional, and I'll never forget, I was with a wonderful mentor and brother, a guy named Jeff Gorsuch, who's a navigator from long time,
Mm.
and was missionary in Singapore for a while, and I was with Jeff about 15 years ago, actually, and we were we were staying in this we were doing some work together, so we were staying in this little condo that a friend of his had let him use in Frisco, Colorado, in the middle
Mm.
of the winter. And so every morning, their very first morning, we got up. So I'm maybe like in my early 40s at this point, and he's probably in his early 60s,
Good.
and a lifelong friend of Jesus. This
Wow.
guy is, and so we're gonna walk into town and get some coffee. So he's like, so we like throw our coats on. And we're gonna walk through the snow. And I'm a Florida. I grew up in Boston, so I miss the snow. So I'm like
Yeah.
excited to walk through the snow. And so we get out the door and we sort of walking down this path. And he says, "Hey, do you mind if we pray while we walk?"
Mm.
And I said, I mean, yeah, sure, that's fine." And he starts talking to Jesus, and I start looking for the third set of footprints next to us.
Wow.
He His conversation with Jesus was so present, so, proximal, he was not talking to God in heaven. He was talking to Jesus that was walking right with us in that group.
Wow.
And that ex and so every day, the first day I was sort of a witness, I was not a participant.
Yeah.
It was too And so the next day, and he was so patient with me, didn't prod, and, by the third day, Jesus was walking between us, and we were both talking to him,
Wow.
and, it was an amazing experience, and it absolutely felt weird at first,
Sure.
but then as the truth of it sunk into my heart, and as the Spirit sort of, I think, opened my eyes and opened my heart to his presence, I think it just became very, very natural. And so I wake up every morning and try to recapture that experience. That's the first thing I try to do when I open my eyes in the morning is say good morning to the Lord, and ask him if he's there, and what does he want me
Wow.
to do today, and what's he doing today, and how can I be a part of that? And some days I feel like he's standing at the edge of my bed and I'm talking to him. Some days I feel like I'm talking to air. It's not perfect,
Yeah.
but I think for me, like the just that idea of connection with God, and realizing that he's personal and that he's present and that he's proximal, he's close.
Yeah.
He's not uh uh the Psalm, I think it's Psalm 116, says he inclines his ear to hear us. That means he's not like, oh, is Brett talking? It means he's actually waiting for me to talk to him. He's waiting for you to talk to him. And when you
Yeah.
have that mindset that God loves us so much and he's so engaged with us personally, I think that for me anyway, that's helped me to walk in that identity, as a most loved son of the most high God. So
Yeah. Man, that's very, very powerful. Because I was just thinking about, as you were saying that, so the Old Testament and the New Testament, like the Old Testament is sort of a servant mindset. The New Testament is more of a sonship
mhm,
mindset, and it's completely different. Okay, so
sure.
what you're talking about is is even further along the sonship path. I mean, my dad is right here. My brother
Right.
Jesus is right here, kind of,
Right.
and what did that sound like? I was just thinking to myself, like, when I pray, I'm like, I don't say, Father in heaven, I might say,
Yeah.
hey Lord, whatever, but I'm not having a conversation like he's
Yeah.
right there. So can you show, would you mind saying kind of a few words? How does that look? I know it's kind of
Yeah, I
weird,
mean,
but
I'll tell you how it doesn't look. My
yeah.
grandfather was a missionary to China. He was
Okay.
incredibly faithful man.
Yeah.
My dad was actually born in China as a missionary's kid. And I used to tease my grandfather that he prayed in the King James version, and it's not that.
Right.
And
Okay.
so, it's understanding that that just as you and I are sitting here talking to each other across
Yeah.
this camera and
Yeah.
microphone, that Jesus is,
Right
right
there.
next to me watching this and smiling at the dumb things that I say
Yeah.
and, thinking this is Brett. Like you said, this is my brother. This is my friend.
Yeah.
This is a man who I love, and I'm excited for what he's doing. I'm excited that he gets to talk to my other brother Rufus today,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that these guys can be connected.
That's very moving, man. I mean, it's a bunch of pictures kind of in my mind. I'm thinking of like the prodigal son. I'm thinking of
Sure.
the father who was like watching for him. And,
Right.
and even the brothers, it's kind of funny. The one brother comes back and of course throws the party for him. The other brother has been there. It's like, hey, I've been
Remember
here. I've
me?
I've done this.
Yeah.
I've done that. And he's like, it's not about what you've done. I mean, you're a son. You had access to all this stuff too.
Right.
So the idea of God is right here. He's
Yeah.
here, and it's not because we have done so many things or haven't done so many. I mean, he's just here because he loves us. So
Yeah.
anyway, man, that's something really, really powerful to meditate on. So let me ask this. We've talked about this, and I kind of alluded to this earlier. Your community. I mean, what role
Yeah.
has community played in your spiritual journey, and how do you actively engage with fellow believers to,
Yeah.
to strengthen your relationship with other guys and with God?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, community is huge for me. It's
Yeah.
it's really Man in the Mirror's mission is to help men engage in meaningful relationships that
Okay.
change lives and build the kingdom of God. And
Nice.
so we're all about relationships, meaningful experiences and meaningful conversations lead to meaningful relationships.
Yeah.
So that's what we talk about. And so I've got, the first thing I have is I have a great church family. I'm an elder and pastor in my church, a lay
Wow.
pastor, and
Okay.
I don't have time for it, but I do it anyway.
Okay.
Uh, and so I've got brothers, fellow elders and fellow deacons, and a few other men in the church we're tight, we're close. I've only been in this church about 4 years, and it's the most unique church I've ever been at in terms of just hospitality and
Hmm.
community. It's just an incredibly tight-knit group of people. And, and then my family's always been close and we're a small family, there's just 4 of us, but
Yeah.
and interestingly, we've had my parents around for some of our marriage, but for the most part, we've had to go see people. My wife comes from a larger family, and we love to
Mm.
go see family. But it's really those men, and then I've got a few guys that are closer, and then I've got one guy that's my best friend who, he just never fails to tell me the truth,
Mm.
and he's wired a lot differently than I am, and so we're good for each other in that way. He's a little
Sure.
bit younger than me, um, so he likes to call me he used to call me his big brother, and I'm like, "I think we're more like just brothers now," like,
Yeah.
uh, but, he's more like a partner even than a brother, like, he's closer than that. It's that
Yeah.
friend that's closer than a brother. And so I think, without that, um, we're fallen creatures
Mm.
with, messed up hearts and the world of flesh and the devil are constantly conspiring against us, right? And so if you don't have a community around you, especially for men, if you don't have some guys around you who will lock arms with you and your ride or die friends,
Yeah.
you know, you know, whose car are we gonna take friends, that if you don't have those guys, I just don't know how I think that's what makes men lonely and isolated and miserable, and
Yeah.
that's why deaths of despair are up,
Sure.
suicide and dangerous behavior, opioid deaths are up. There's a huge crisis of loneliness among men right now. All the statistics are showing there's a loneliness epidemic that's going
Mm.
on for men. And I could give you numbers, but they're boring. Just it's
Yeah.
3 times more men today say they have no friends than even 10 or 15 years ago. So
Wow.
no friends, 0 close friends.
That's
Um,
crazy.
and so, I think that's a huge issue for men these days.
Sure.
I think in the church, honestly, I think 30 years ago in the church, cultural Christianity was the driving issue. There were a
Yep.
lot of people in church, lukewarm Christians, lukewarm spew you out of my mouth Christians who had one foot inside and one foot outside, and they needed somebody like Pat Morley to come along and say, guys, you need to get serious about your faith.
Mm,
You need to understand who God is and work and be intentional about being close to him. And that changed my life. That mindset changed my life.
sure.
I think now the biggest issue in the church is loneliness, is that men feel all alone. They don't understand who God is.
Hmm.
They don't understand that he loves them personally, and they don't feel lovable. And then they're isolated and not in community.
That's incredible. First of all, I'll say that, uh-oh, buddy.
Sorry about that.
No, no problem. Okay, I thought to lay hands on the computer screen here. I
Yeah.
thought you're right. All right.
Yep.
I could totally relate to what you're saying. Number one, I was thinking to myself, you know what? I might have been a part of that group that didn't have friends because I've been a kind of a loner person.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm more introvert than extrovert, but I say I'm an introvert that pretends to be an extrovert for money, kind of. But that's kind of how I describe myself. But the other thing is that so anyway, I can relate to that. And I think the guys naturally they don't hang out with people. I don't know. It's just, it's different. And I didn't even understand really the power of community
Yeah.
until probably, I don't know, maybe 6 months, a year ago. And I grew up in church. My father and my mother were pastors. I grew up in church,
Yeah.
and but still, I know all the scriptures and all the, hey, don't
Right.
forsake to assemble
Right.
yourselves, all that. But what does that mean? I don't, you know what I mean? I didn't know what that meant.
I'll tell you the place that I learned more about brotherhood and community than any other place was in my fraternity in college.
I could see
And
that.
and I had, and it's, I tell people like I grew up in church and went to college and kind of walked away from my faith. I joined a new church in college.
Hmm.
It was the Church of Alpha Sigma Phi. It was my fraternity. And
Okay.
I had shared values. I
Yeah.
had brothers that would do things with me. I had a big brother who schooled me
Hmm.
in what I was supposed to know. I had a little brother that I was responsible for. And
Okay.
so there's discipleship built
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
fraternity life. I had the larger organization of our national organization, which was sort of our denominational, so to speak.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I really saw we went through a tragedy together right after I graduated from college. One of my fraternity brothers, actually my best friend, died, was
Wow.
killed in a tragic accident. And I watched these brothers come together and lean on each other and cry together
Wow.
and, support each other and look, we're desperately looking for it felt so meaningless and so tragic and pointless, but we clung together. And I realized, when I got here, I realized like that brotherhood, that
Yeah.
shared vision and mission, and it's a counterfeit version of Christianity,
Yes.
but
Yes.
but the best counterfeits are the ones that look the most like the real thing, right?
100%, 100%. And I
And
think that a lot
so
of the churches, they don't, we've lost that, I think.
yeah,
And I mean, because here I was growing up in church for, my dad led me to the Lord when I was 8 years old. So my father died about 8 years ago.
yeah,
He led me to the Lord when I was 8. So I've been born again for 47 years, and I didn't understand the power of community. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And so, yeah, so I think that those counterfeits, but I mean, you need that.
right,
And that was an empty space that filled, and that's
yeah,
really interesting how that, but I'm starting to see the power of it now, and so that's why,
yeah,
yeah. So I always ask people about that. So that's interesting.
yeah,
So, you have been, I mean, you and I can't have a lot in common here, but so you're an entrepreneur. You came into the ministry. And I guess I'm just curious how you discovered your sense of purpose. I feel a lot of the same way you do. I mean, my growing up, the church was sort of the family business for me, and I was not interested at all in the family business, mainly because I think that my parents maybe wanted me to take over the ministry, but we never had that conversation, so it's kind of assumed. And so
yeah,
when I wasn't
yeah,
interested, but I find myself now more drawn to that after having been an entrepreneur for so many years. So anyway, I'm curious, how did you discover your sense of purpose? And then what advice would you give to people that are still sort of struggling to find that kind of deeper sense of meaning and satisfaction in their life?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's not one way to come to it. There,
Okay.
I've heard it said that your calling is the intersection of your talent and opportunity.
Okay.
And,
Nice.
that's kind of how it was for me. Like if you had asked me, honestly, 2 or 3 years into being at Man in the Mirror, I was jonesing for something else to do. I was
Really?
just, oh,
Okay.
I had gone from running a software company to being sort of at the middle management level of a small organization.
Yeah.
And, um, I was arrogant, I was pretty arrogant still. And you know, not even though I spent the first year sort of walking on eggshells
Mm.
because, I'd taken a company into bankruptcy and I'd almost wrecked my marriage. It's not things that you mentioned in the job interview when you're
Right. Yeah.
and but they knew I didn't know that they knew, but they knew they had done their homework. But for me, it was just sort of, the Lord just kept shutting doors for me. Every time
Mm.
I thought I would talk to my friends and they would be like, "Oh yeah, this headhunter called me, or this company called me, or this guy told me about this job." And I'm sitting here like, would somebody call me? Would somebody do something, to show me? And I'd look at stuff and nothing would really appeal to me. And
Mm.
and so I feel like for me, God just sort of shepherded me, just sort of gave me some guardrails, and
Yeah.
I just stayed within them. I know some other people that I've had to talk to about, they're just stuck. They are stuck in a rut, a rut. You've heard that phrase, a rut is just a grave with both ends knocked out.
No,
Um,
I didn't hear that.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, a
Okay.
rut's just a grave with both ends knocked out, that they need to be yanked out of it,
Mm.
and so God will sometimes do that kindly and sometimes do that harshly if that's what it takes to get you to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I just think I would encourage when guys say I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do or who I'm supposed to be, I tell them, well, what do your friends say? What does your wife say? Why
Yes.
our wives know us better
Yes.
better than we know ourselves,
That's
and
right.
so asking people for counsel and then not being afraid to take a risk. And
Sure.
that's especially important if you're married, that's why your wife has to be invested in it.
Yeah.
Um, my wife on the surface is much more risk averse than I am,
Okay.
but when we get down into it, she's actually the one that usually is the one that's saying, "Go for it.
Nice.
Go for it. You should do this." I think a good partnership helps a lot when it comes to that.
Oh, 100%. And it's interesting. I found this to be true. I don't know what you thought is about this, but the voice of God sounds amazingly like my wife's voice
Yeah.
very often. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
My
yeah,
wife has she speaks Holy Spirit,
that's
So
hilarious. Yes, I know. And I know exactly what you're talking about. So, having been an entrepreneur myself, a term that I use a lot is getting shot out of the sky. So I feel like I've gotten shot out of the sky a lot. Sounds like you have too, had a lot of different crazy experiences. Um, how and that stuff, those situations can affect your self-image.
yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, what practical tools do you use, and maybe that you provide for the men that in your ministry that help to cultivate a positive self-image and to sort of make sure people align with God's plan for their lives.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to what we've already talked about, and having
Yeah,
those relationships
yeah, that's
that
huge. Yeah,
guys can reflect back to you. You do need guys to tell you the truth. Like
sure.
I had a time probably 3 or 4 years ago at Man in the Mirror, maybe right before COVID, and I was really frustrated with the church.
Hmm.
Here I am, uh, we're just Man in the Mirror, like we're just trying to help churches disciple men more effectively.
Sure.
Most of what we offer doesn't cost anything, and the stuff that we do charge for, we don't charge what it costs us,
Yeah, sure.
and yet, it just felt like the church just didn't care about men very much. And so I'll never forget, I was sitting in a cigar shop with my best friend, and we're both smoking a cigar, and I'm just railing against the church. I'm just, oh, these people don't care, they're not authentic. Rah, I'm just like, And finally, he just looks, he's like dead silent, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "You're the president of a ministry that helps churches disciple men. You cannot be this cynical about it.
Mm.
You cannot be. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, you need to," I won't even use all the words that he used, but
You
it
got the
had
point
to do with
across.
removing my head from a certain place.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I was just like, "Oh, wow, you're right. You're right." And so, it brought me to a place of repentance for my bad attitude and my, because the mistake I had made was thinking it was all up to me.
Oh, right, right,
And
right.
so if these churches weren't doing what we wanted them to do to reach the men more effectively, it's I'm an idiot or they are, and I choose them in that
Sure,
situation. But that's not what was going on at all. It's just we live in a fallen world, and church is hard, and there's 1,000 competing priorities,
sure,
and
absolutely.
no, I've never met a pastor who doesn't want his men to be disciples, to know God intimately, and to lead their families well. So that's not the problem, and so I think for me that just having that person that will speak truth to you, and then just having a heart that's humble and open to being repentant, and humility's not being a doormat.
Okay.
Humility is just being honest about your own failings, and your own limitations. And I think when you can be you can be fierce and humble at the same time. And so I think, just being willing to admit my own shortcomings and have friends that will help me see those things and encourage me. I've got a lot. Jesse's he's told me when I've been a jerk, but he's also a lot of times reassured me when I've been down on myself, that
Yeah.
and reminded me all that God's done, all the promises that there are, and we do that for each other.
I love that, because that's part of honesty too, not just how bad the
Absolutely.
situation is, but how great God is and his power
Absolutely.
working in you. So before we wrap this up, I mean, I've been really enjoying hanging out with you, and I feel like, man, we could easily turn this into a part two, part three. But um, in terms of Bible promises, I mean, what's the one Bible promise that really has been super instrumental in, shaping your walk and
Yeah.
helping you to become, the person that you are today?
Sure. I'll tell you one that's been really impactful for me recently is Nehemiah 8:10. When Nehemiah's talking to the people in Jerusalem, getting them to rebuild the wall, and he says, "The joy of the Lord is my strength."
Mm,
And I think we often hear that verse, and we think it says, "My joy in the Lord is my strength,"
yeah,
but that's not what the verse says. The verse says, "It's the Lord's joy that is my strength. The joy of the Lord is my strength." And just recognizing that the Lord is joyful over me.
yeah,
He called me, I'm my theological tradition, like he called me before the dawn of time
yeah.
to be a follower, to be his follower. And he's so, um, that brings him joy for me to follow him, because I'm walking in his will. And so his joy becomes my strength, not my strength,
Yeah.
not my circumstances, not my abilities or my emotional strength, but his joy brings me strength. And I know he loves me. I know I'm a loved son.
Wow, what a blessing it is to have access to his joy, his grace, and
Amen.
just yeah, him. So how do people connect with Man in the Mirror? I mean, if you want to connect with you guys, what's the
Yeah, we're
easiest way to do?
super easy. Just manandthemirror.org on the website, or we're in most of the social media. Just looking up Man in the Mirror, you'll get a lot of Michael Jackson stuff still, but
I'm sure.
but
That's hilarious. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
that here's a I'll tell you last thing. So
Yeah,
Man in
yeah.
the Mirror, the book Man in the Mirror and the song Man in the Mirror came out within months of each other.
Really?
And when the book was already like in the process of being published when the
Yeah.
song came out,
Wow.
it was too late to change anything.
Yeah.
And plus, you never know what a song if a song's going to be popular or not.
Right, right, right,
But
right.
But anyway, yeah, so it's, it's based on the verse in James where it talks about a man looking in the glass and examining himself. And so yeah, so we
That's
are not
funny.
we have no affiliations with Michael Jackson or his estate. We
Yeah,
are
that's interesting. Well, I mean, that could be good and bad too. I mean, having
Yeah,
the positive push from that, and
right,
so
sure.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And you can maybe do a line or two of Man in the Mirror too. I mean, hey, you could sing a
You
couple
I
lines.
there are actually some good lyrics in there, I'm gonna make a
That's
change.
hilarious. Make a
Gonna make a
change.
change.
There
Yeah.
you go. Well, Brett, man, I really appreciate your time, and this has been a blast. It's interesting. Some I've talked to quite a few people, and some people, I mean, I love everybody I've talked to, but sometimes I make just a great connection. It just happens right away, and I could tell it's going to be a great conversation. And this is one of those times, and I
Oh, thanks,
really,
man.
yeah, man, I really appreciate that. So if you wouldn't be open, at least be open to it, man, I'd love to reach out to you again sometime and see how things
Yeah,
are going.
absolutely.
And where are you
Anytime.
guys located? You're in Florida, right?
Yeah, so we're just north of Orlando in
Okay.
Castleberry, Florida.
So, well, I was going to say that I was going to come maybe visit, but there's alligators down there, right? Is there alligators there?
Florida will kill you. We have hurricanes, tornadoes, alligators,
Well, I'm coming from New Orleans though, so
all the
I'm not scared of the hurricanes now. I
yeah,
can deal
there
with
you
that.
go.
But
Yeah.
the alligators, I don't know. But anyway, but
Yeah.
man, hey, again, thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks
All
again, man.
right.
All right,
Thanks
take
for
care. All
All right,
right,
bye.
bye-bye. Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Hey, thanks again for tuning in today. And until next time, stay aligned with God's promises and empowered by His word. We'll see you next time.